Everybody's having a great time here in Tampa. Clearwater, excuse me, I've been corrected a few times. I want to once again greatly thank Tampa Bay HBPA for all their support in this and hosting our event. I'd like to thank the staff here at the Sand Key Resort. They've been wonderful to work with, doing the best they can. We've had a lot of room changes, but they've done as much as they possibly can to get us fitted in, and they love having us here. So I want to start the convention this morning. We have an update, but I'd preface that by saying that I think that within our conventions, obviously yesterday was very thought-provoking, gave everyone something to think about for the future, certainly gave discussions, but I always feel like we need to have real-world issues that horsemen literally deal with on a daily basis. And I call that the management side of what I'll always have as a topic. Obviously, most of you guys know I spent most of my career as a farm manager, and so for me it's very important to have something literal, tangible, knowing that you guys need to know this information. It affects you, certainly affects your daily lives as horsemen on the track. So we're going to have some updates on the implementation of digital tattoos for the horse identification. Curtis Linnell, which you'll remember, along with Hank Zetlin, spoke to us in New Orleans last year and talked about the implementations of this. But Curtis is joined by Emma Smith today, and they're going to talk to us about the topic. Thanks to the Iowa HBPA and the Colorado Horse Racing Association for helping us sponsor. So briefly, I'll reintroduce Curtis. Curtis is the Executive Vice President of the Thoroughbred Racing Protective Bureau, which is the investigative company wholly owned by the TRA, Thoroughbred Racing Associations of North America. Curtis has held management positions at racetracks and associations since 1986, including manager of racing and wagering at Marquis Downs, and also the director of operations at Hastings Park, where we were in July of 2016. Also, I'd like to introduce Emma Smith. Emma's been employed with TRPB and is working out of the Fair Hill office since June of 17. She's been active in numerous background investigations, industry conferences, training sessions, including presentations to ROPE, the Racing Officials Accreditation Program, and her current focus is the management of the transition process between moving from our physical branding that we're all familiar with of the lip tattoos to the new TRPB digital tattoos. So with that, I'd like to welcome both Curtis and Emma to the stage.
I'll take one of the remote mics here and we'll get the podium position for Emma. It seems there's a height difference between Eric and Emma, I think. Try that, see if it works.
Testing. It seems to work.
Well, thank you all. Thank you for that introduction, Eric. Really pleased to be here with an update. I noticed Eric said New Orleans correctly. I always try to get my Canadian tongue around that pronunciation, but thank you. Ed Fernassi always corrects me all the time, but he's gentle and doesn't whack me or something. But we're pleased to be here for an update. This is an informal presentation. I want, over on the side, Hank Zetlin. I'd just like Hank to stand. Hank is the TRPB president and TRA executive vice president, and certainly has brought the board of directors all the way through many discussions on the transition of lip tattoos, which is something very central to what the TRPB is. Integrity in terms of the identification of horses and making horse identification happen correctly 100% of the time. And that's our goal, not like phone companies or airlines, which promise 99.99%. We need horse identification for integrity 100% of the time. And that's the reason we're transitioning to the digital tattoo program and what our goals are. Emma's just going to take us through this presentation. I'm here purely for commentary and color. That's my, after spending some time in the Florida sun, I look like a lobster, so that's the color part. But she'll take us through, and then we'll have some time for questions and discussions and a few comments. But we're well into this process now, so please, Emma, take it away.
Hello. So I think we'll just jump right into it. The new process is still going to begin with full inspections when there are babies. Weanlings are still by their mother's side. The registration is not going to be digital, though. So the papers will be electronic. The microchip number that is now required will be on the electronic papers. The process will still be the same. They're still going to have to take, a main sample from the foal for DNA certification to, verify that it is the foal that they say it is. The electronic papers will still consist of age, date of birth, dam, sire, a very detailed description of markings, the breeder, and all that sort of information. As well
and
as
we should add, and this is where I jump in, all this full inspection is being done by certified TRPB technicians. We have 52 full-time technicians across I say full inspection, I didn't mean full inspection. I mean digital tattoo verification so all this information on the horses is now going to be synthesized by those TRPB technicians.
Yes. The full inspection will not be done by the TRPB technicians. That'll be up to the breeder. And those, along with the electronic papers, there's going to be almost a PDF version of all the full photographs attached to those papers so that, like Curtis said, when the TRPB technicians go to certify at racing age, they'll be able to use those full photographs as well to help identify the horse. And then here's an example of the electronic papers that we have now been given out in 2018. So foals of last year and onward will no longer have physical papers, and it'll all be electronic. And then there will also be a history attached to that certificate of who owned the horse, when the horse was transferred to a new owner, sales, claims, and things like that.
And you may not be able to see this on the papers, but if you've seen physical papers, the microchip number is a 15-digit number, and that is just above the issue 2 column, which is the third written line on the bottom. So just above that is a 15-digit microchip number. Again, we're not identifying horses based on the microchip number, but we're verifying the microchip number to identify the horse.
So speaking about microchips, in 2016, the Jockey Club made it, volunteer. If you wanted to microchip your horse, you could. In 2017, that became required. So every foal of 2017 and onward is, in order to be registered as a foal, has to be microchipped. And then, like I stated earlier, 2018 is when they released the digital registration and electronic papers. The microchips are one of the two biggest parts of our new digital tattoo. It's going to be one of two forms to identify a horse. And it'll have to be, the microchip will be required in order for them to get TRPB certified. The microchip will usually be placed in the nuchal ligament, which you can kind of tell based on where she's scanning in the picture is right below the crest of the neck, basically anywhere from the pole down to the base of the withers. And then some places, believe mainly Western Canada, have been putting it in the interdental papilla, which is actually a pocket of air in between the two front teeth of the upper gum in the horse's mouth. And then that microchip number, when scanned, will bring up those electronic papers and full photographs that we had just talked about. Currently, as we've been doing for a very long time, they are doing physical lip tattoos underneath the upper lip of the horse. And in order to apply that lip tattoo, they use physical papers that describe the markings, and then our TRPB technicians use those markings to look at the horse and be like, yes, this is a horse, or no, it's not. And then depending on if the horse is who it says it is, they then apply the lip tattoo, which is used currently by horse identifiers in the paddock, veterinarians, stewards, or anyone else who needs to identify that horse. And currently, they're still applying those lip tattoos, but we're already starting the transition into the digital tattoo, which will include the microchip as well as updated photographs of the horse upon time of certification. And those will be attached to those electronic papers so that when the horse comes to race or the horse is getting pre-race checked by a vet, that they can not only use the papers but make sure the photos match the horse as well. And those will also be done by the TRPB technicians.
Now, just to jump in here, Emma, and this next part is important because it speaks directly to horse people. The process to having your horse with a tattoo will not change. So from your standpoint, everything that is currently happening with the current technicians, taking the horse to a current technician to get tattooed is exactly the same process. The only difference is, of course, that horse has to be microchipped beforehand, and we've already covered that. But secondly, then that tattoo is a digital tattoo rather than a physical tattoo. So we'll take you through those steps, but you'll be familiar with them because they've been the same steps for a long time.
So the first step, and maybe the most important step, is to collect the fee for the tattoo. The price will be the same. Then they'll have multiple ways you can collect it: check, card, PayPal, Apple Pay, Google Pay, as well as some vouchers from tracks, because some tracks pay for the horses to be tattooed themselves. That'll all be collected prior to the identification and certification. So if that money cannot be provided at the very beginning, the technician will not continue on to tattoo the horse. And then their second step is they are going to use a scanner that we provided them that is enabled with Bluetooth, that they can connect to the tablet to scan the microchip in the horse, whether it's on the neck or in the muzzle. And then once that scanner picks up the microchip number, it will immediately transfer over to the tablet and bring up the electronic papers and full photographs that correspond with that number. So then they'll be able to read, based off that electronic paper that was pulled up, whether it is indeed the correct horse. And then they will confirm the horse like they do now based off those markings. And now they'll have full photographs as well to match the horse. If the horse is confirmed to be correct, they will continue on with the identification by taking pictures and whatnot. And if not confirmed, they still have to take pictures as to why the horse has been rejected to send in to the jockey club so that the jockey club can resolve any issues like they do now. So the technician will upload a selection of 8 to 12 photographs depending on how heavily marked the horse is. Generally, it'll be the general left front side views, as well as any close-up of any markings or scars or anything unique to that horse. And then once those are taken, they will be uploaded to the interactive website that the technicians use as a sort of database for all these horses. And those will replace the full photographs and that are attached to the paper. So now we'll have uploaded new photographs of that horse at racing age. And then for the TRPB headquarters purposes, they will be uploaded to a FTP site so that we have those on file in case once the horse retires or is rehomed, anyone reaches out asking for photographs or information on that horse. As well as the photographs, there's going to be a main headshot similar to this taken of the horse that will receive a TRPB embossment on the face shot. That will be one of the first photographs that comes up to kind of reinforce that the horse has been certified. in addition to a digital stamp on the electronic papers. And then here are some examples of what the technician will be taking for the photographs to use for identification. We have some front view pictures where you can see, any markings on the face or front legs. Left and right side view, so you kind of have a bigger picture of the horse. And then we have a close-up of any special markings, like a star blaze or any cowlicks on the neck, face, chest, wherever that may be. As well as chestnuts, or some people know them as night eyes, because it's like a fingerprint. Each horse has their own unique chestnut, and it'll be very rare to see a horse with two different horses with the same looking chestnut.
And the pictures of the horse's face, in almost all cases, from a horse identifier in the paddock standpoint, and we'll get into that, is going to be the primary photo. Most horses that are identified or re-identified can be identified from their facial picture, and digital pictures on a tablet have a tremendous amount of detail, and I know you're quite a ways back, but it's the ability to expand horses to see every particular detail of their markings, and especially their face, is tremendous. So for horse identification, there'll be a number of different tool sets in order to verify that horse's identity. And certainly, as Emma said, chestnuts or night eyes are very distinctive of a singular horse.
And then for 2019, this year, we are still going to be taking pictures of the lip tattoo like we usually do, and that will be used as well up till the end of this year, which, of course, then there will no longer be a lip tattoo, so these set of pictures will no longer be needed or necessary.
And just before we get into this next section, this year is a transition year. We're training tattoo technicians. We'll give you an update of where that training is right now. But this year, because we're doing both lip tattoos and at some point we'll turn on digital certification and doing the photos and upload, there will be some more time used per horse this year. That's not going to be the typical process after we get into just pure digital tattooing. We expect that process to be the same amount of time or even slightly more efficient than what we currently have for lip tattoos. But this year there will be some more time. So do keep that keep that in mind when horses are taken for identification. The next set of slides, and we put this in even though this isn't really ours, this is Encompass's, is the proposed, or actually in development, the horse identification module. Just go to the next one, Emma. The horse identification module that is going to be used in the paddock by the horse identifier. We get a lot of questions about this, how that's going to work. So we took the liberty to take some Encompass development designs and include it in here just to show you.
Yeah, so like Curtis was saying, this will be used by paddock identifiers, and it is a phone application, which I believe is able for iPhones and Androids. And this will give them a sort of an access to what the technicians do, but it will only be able to be viewed by horse identifiers. Then these are some wireframes, so like the login page, and then where you would scan the microchip number. And here are just some basic step-by-step slides. So here we have a technician who tattoos at Keeneland in Charlestown, or a horse identifier. Now, the horse identifier will only be able to see the tracks that they are employed by and identify in the paddock. So a Keeneland horse identifier or a paddock identifier would not be able to see any of the horses entered in at like Saratoga or Santa Anita. And then they will go ahead and select. So if they have to go do a race, they'll go and select the track and the date of the horses that are running that day, and they'll have a selection of all the races racing races 1 through 9, 10, 11, however many are running that day. And then they can go even deeper and specifically select the race, so race 1, and it'll provide the type of race and then all the horses entered in that race. And then this one is a sample of if they've already checked off some horses in the paddock, a check will appear next to their name. And then they can go even deeper and select the horse. So here we have a horse in post position 7 selected, and those empty squares at the bottom, those would be where the photographs that the tattoo technician took would appear for that horse identifier as
Now,
well.
what's also important is that the horse identifier or the race office will be able to download this card in the morning. So they'll have all the information local to their tablet when they're in the paddock. So they won't need online wire access, so it'll be very quick because it'll be using the local card that they've already downloaded.
And then it also provides a description, like they do now, of the horse's markings, the chip number, registration number, and then if it applies, it'll say the tattoo number if a horse is older and has a physical tattoo versus the digital. So that's what the horse identification module looks like. There's also an option for them to just scan instead of searching for the horse like this, and it'll still pull up the correct horse. We provide, so what they'll be using for the horse identification and pack identification is stuff that we supply from Datamars for the scanner, as well as a Galaxy tablet. These are some specifications. We supply them to all the technicians, but all of our 50 some odd technicians, but the tracks have to select their own tablets and scanners, and these are the ones we use and give out in case anyone is interested in going out and, purchasing their own similar to ours. In July of 2018, at the ARCI meeting, a model rule was updated to match the digital tattoo versus the physical tattoo, effective January 1st, 2020. And this is just the rule that was taken from their handbook or model rules book. And then our goal for this digital tattoo is to have a more effective and almost superior form of identification than we currently have. We'll have those 2 forms of identification, and which is the updated photographs as well as the chip number. Anytime that horse's papers are viewed at, that date and time and who it was looked at will be logged so that we can, they can keep track of who's looking at papers or who's virtually signing papers out, like for the racing office or like a claim or a sales. And this database will be available to certain individuals like stewards, horse identifiers, veterinarians, maybe even clockers if a track so wishes for workout times in the morning. So these are all going to be available to, racing personnel who work in the office or who are in charge of the claims and the entries and that sort of thing. So this will all be available to them. They won't need physical papers to make sure they make it from one track to another. They're just going to be already on that database so that they'll already be there when that horse arrives to a track for a race or something like that.
So just, as a couple takeaways, and we'll just do a list of some updates of where we are with the training, but lip tattoos, what we're doing now with both, while we're doing lip tattoos, that will end December 31st, 2019. So if you want to get your horse with a lip tattoo, you better get that horse scheduled for identification now with the technician, because after December 31st, 2019, we will not be applying a lip tattoo. We will be applying digital tattoos at some point this year, in addition to lip tattoos. And then, of course, starting January 1st, 2020, digital tattoos are what we'll be doing for every horse that's identified. There won't be any ink available for the technicians. We're not ordering new dyes or new cast irons or anything else. So that will cease December 31st, 2019. where we are on the training right now, and we've hired a full-time training technician. And so far, and we've outfitted technicians, our TRPB technicians, with tablets and Bluetooth scanners and a whole host of equipment like vehicle chargers, and it seems that we're currently right now working on the electronic interface with Square for credit card and Google Pay and Apple Pay functionality for those technicians in the field. We've currently completed the training at Sam Houston, Race Park, Oaklawn Park, Turfway Park, Sunland Park, Golden Gate Fields, Santa Anita Park, Turf Paradise. This month, Ocala, Tampa Bay, Gulfstream, Laurel, and Charlestown will all be completed. And next month,
Turfway was also done.
Oh, and Turfway. Aqueduct Parks, Fauner, Hawthorne, Thistledown, and Indiana Downs for next month. And the list continues. 52 tattoo technicians across the U.S. and Canada, and they'll be trained and in place by all of them by late summer. And as soon as we have our database ready at the Jockey Club, we'll be turning on digital tattoos in addition to lip tattoos. We're already encountering a lot of stories and situations with technicians as we get out in the field. We have a few of them. You had one, I think, last week, right, Emma?
Yes, we had, during the training, I believe at Turf Paradise, it may have been Golden Gate, but the horse presented to them was claimed to be one horse, and then they went to scan the horse, and a different set of papers pulled up than the horse that was brought to them. Unbeknownst to the trainer, he had confused that horse from the beginning, from 2 horses down. So this horse A had been working, breezing under the horse B's name and was about to be entered to race the next day. So luckily they got caught in time. They were able to avoid any fines that would get upon entering the wrong horse. But so that saved that trainer in that instance.
Right. And we're encountering a number of those different situations in the field, and all are unique and interesting, but we're working our way through it. Emma has a full-time tattoo technician trainer. Tina Appleby, longtime regulator and investigator, who is going from track to track and will only be slowed down if certain planes are not allowed to fly. But other than that situation, she'll be going full time. But it's a big process, and Emma's done a great job on keeping this all together and the schedule and everything else. But please, anything else, Emma?
Nope, I think that
Okay.
mostly
So we'll
covers it.
entertain any questions that you may have.
Before you get started opening
Sure.
questions, I do think that you're going to get asked a lot of questions that is not under your control. Because I think there's, the question I get asked the most is about the administrator of the papers. You know, there's a lot of concern about when do I get my zero date? When, you know, I'm shipping in for turf races, I need my zero date, where's the papers? So I do think you're gonna get some questions like that, so maybe in explaining, you may know a lot of those answers, but that isn't under your watch, so.
And that's a great point, Eric, because digital certificates will be a whole new field for horsemen and race offices to deal with, and it's again, that's not us. That's between the Jockey Club and administering that through Encompass, and also each individual race office. I know there's an electronic process to check out papers and to administer those, but we're not familiar with exactly how that process works, and really we're not involved in it. We access the digital papers the same way we access the physical papers, through the Jockey Club registry database.
Okay, you probably answered this question, but so I've got 2-year-olds at Sam Houston right now. Am I going to lip tattoo them and do the digital, or just do the digital?
Again, we're in position, we're doing lip tattoos to the end of the year. So any horse comes to us for identification prior to racing, that horse will have a lip tattoo. At some point, because we're trained at Sam Houston and ready to go when the site goes live, the Jockey Club registry site goes live, that we can start to certify horses digitally. We're also going to, as soon as we get a horse, in that period of time, also digitally tattoo. So you're paying for one tattoo fee. If we're able to do both the rest of this year, we'll do both.
So will I be
Currently,
paying
that's not the
twice?
case, and we
No.
expect that only to be the case probably at the start of Q3. So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
correct. Yeah, so you get a daily double right now. Well, I shouldn't say right now. As soon as we can do both, we'll do both. So that means that the database is live and the technician's trained and we're set up, and it's prior to December 31st, 2019. No, it's the only time we do a TRPB tattoo is before the horse runs its first, and in some exceptions, its second lifetime start. So that one-time process will be the point of the TRPB tattoo. As it is now, will be in the future. So that's going to be consistent. There is a number of associations that want to have all horses microchipped, and that's purely what associations are doing on their particular property, because they want to get into digital identification, by 2022 rather than 2023. So, or 2024. So there will be a mixed system in the paddock of horse identification between lip tattoos and digital tattoos in the years 2020 and beyond.
Curtis, are you comfortable talking, just from your experience, a little bit about the administrator of the papers? Is that something you're comfortable kind of explaining to this group, how they're going to be responsible for their own papers now? Is that, and I'm not putting you on the spot. If you're comfortable talking about it, that'd be great. If not, I understand.
Yeah, do you mean the digital certificates?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, the digital certificates, as far as we know, and we'll qualify it from our standpoint, as far as we're aware, the digital certificates, and we deal with them all the time because we're dealing with foals of 2018, right, digital? Yeah. So we see those, and obviously we haven't encountered those horses in the field yet. But those digital certificates look exactly the same as physical certificates. So it's a digital image as opposed to a physical image. How those are handled and how those are checked out and the type of authorization processes by state breed organizations and race offices and such will all be part of the structure that'll be administered through the Jockey Club.
Right. So I think one of the things that I want to try to get, and again, this is not the TRPB's area, but we'll let Hank Zetlin explain a little bit. But there is, and I've seen the presentation from the Jockey Club. Again, if you take away the picture of you having a set of foal papers in your hand, you now have it on screen, and you want to ship your papers to Oaklawn Park. That racing secretary then becomes the administrator, their toggle. They become the administrator of that set of papers. If you want to send it to Keeneland, yearling for a sale, they are toggled and they become the administrators of the papers. Now you'll always see a history of who had control of those papers, but it's my understanding when they are under one administrator, they control those papers. They have the authority to move them to another racetrack or move them back to the owner. And that, I think, is a very important detail for people to understand, going along with the digital tattoos. Oh, well, I think that was, I just wanted to try to clarify that. It's the one question I could ask.
Just a couple of things I'd like to add, not about that, but just in general. If you think about the technologies that are all coming together for us to be able to do that, it's pretty interesting, right? So you have a microchip now the size of a piece of rice is one thing. You have these, what used to be PCs now becoming laptops, now becoming tablets, now becoming phones. And we're leveraging all those different technologies, including the communication systems that are available to all of us, to bring this so that it's available to an identifier in the paddock on the day of a race, or to a guy at a gate on the day you arrive with your horse. So it's something we couldn't do without technology moving forward in other areas. So in that case, we're kind of the tail, not the dog. But the other issue I think is important to recognize about this endeavor from the horseman's perspective is it took a few organizations collaborating to get this done well. You know, that what Curtis and Emma talked about, the Jockey Club database. Well, the Jockey Club's cooperating with HBPA, with horsemen, with the TRPB, making their database available to our identifiers. So when we go to identify your horse, right now all we have is a piece of paper, a physical piece of paper. In the future, when we go to do this, we're going to be able to scan that horse's neck, and the foal photos are going to pop up. So the idea of the integrity of that identification gets enhanced because of the collaboration between TRPB and the Jockey Club. On the other end, when that horse shows up at a racetrack, it's the Encompass software that allows the racetrack to then access this information and see the photographs we took, the full photographs if necessary, and the written description. So all those parties are collaborating. The tracks themselves are having to go out and make investment in technology. And Eric was kind enough, we've been talking about this now for a couple of years, waiting for the technologies to move along, waiting for the digital certificates to be available. And we availed ourselves of some horsemen to see what this process would be like. So this is an example. I think a lot of times we hear in the industry how people do their own thing. They try to step on each other. This is, I think, a really good example of a collaborative effort amongst a number of organizations in racing that are going to be helpful to everyone. So with that, if there are any questions about the Jockey Club's piece of this, I might be able to address those because I'm fairly familiar with it, or any other questions for Curtis, Emma, or myself with respect to TRPB.
I see how Eric gets some exercise at these.
Hi, Scott Rake from Minnesota. Say, right now it says the technology is 7.5 inches scanning distance. Do you see that technology evolving, that perhaps, like, when you do come into the backside of a track, that can be scanned from a further distance, or perhaps a horse is entering the track and is going to participate in a timed work, and that horse is identified?
I think that's a great question. Can you hear me if I go
Yep.
down my phone? I think that's a great question. We're really the tail with respect to technology, not the dog. I would think because of other applications in other industries, the distance that these scanners are going to work on is going to increase. So ideally, you would take a horse, for instance, for a workout, you'd walk onto the track under a loop, and that loop would identify the horse as you went by, or a bar that would identify. That's not available today, but our hope is that will be available in the future. We don't, as an industry, we don't invest enough money, or could not invest enough money for that technology to be developed specifically for us. But clearly, that would be a wonderful thing for workouts in the morning, for instance, or when a truck pulls up with a number of horses in the back. Right now, there are issues with identifying those horses, and it's dangerous to get on with the horses, for the human and the horse. So we're hoping that that technology moves that way. It's a great question.
Lloyd Yoth from Turf Paradise. My question is, obviously there's a cost to the chip, and how does it relate to the tattooing? Do you pay for both when you do, are there separate tattooing? Is there a set price on the microchip at this point?
Right now, the microchip is part of the full registration process. So in order to paper the foal, with the DNA test, you have to have a microchip number as part of that registration process. My understanding is with that when you go for that registration kit, is the Jockey Club sends you out that microchip. So for the breeder, they'll receive microchips with the number of foals that they're planning to have.
And one other question, I missed part of your presentation on the muzzle and the neck. Could you clarify that for me, please?
Right. Emma can speak about this. Canadian breds, there's a number of Canadian breds that have the chip in the muzzle and that location, Emma?
It's called the interdental papilla. It's actually a air pocket in the gum between the top two front teeth.
And there's also a number of Canadian breds that also have their microchip in the nuchal ligament. The nuchal ligament is standard across the U.S. for an insertion point. The interesting part is when the chip is in the muzzle, it's just in terms of the last question, the scanner can pick it up from a greater distance than when it's in the nuchal ligament, just because of the embedding of the nuchal ligament. So that's interesting. For us, it doesn't matter. If we don't find the chip in the nuchal ligament, when we scan the horse on initial, when our technician is doing the initial identification, then immediately we'll also try the muzzle. Yeah, I've heard that too, so.
Bob Mosier from Nebraska. I have a jockey club chain of custody question. So I assume as an owner breeder, I will initially be able to log into my jockey club account and see the digital papers on my horse. If I sell it privately before it ever makes it to a track or sale, I can log in and transfer that to someone else. If I take it to the track, I can transfer custody to my trainer. Is that kind of how this is going to work?
Yeah, it's kind of a chain of command where the jockey club will have somebody that's and it starts out with who the owner of the foal is, and at that point you have the right to then transfer it on to a track, and then when that track has it and you're running at that track, you're the one that will enable the track to transfer it to the next track. So the way you've described it is exactly the way it's envisioned to work.
Question about the old papers and the new papers. When we're going to have everything go to digital, I get that. I've already had some of those. But you have horses running that are 5, 6, 7 years old. You still got papers out there. So are we going to be dealing with physical papers and digital papers until those horses no longer run? Or are they going to just be digitalized? You know, the old papers, because I know they're in the computer, so why can't you see them? Because how are you going to transfer stuff to the racetracks? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, you're going to be dealing with both for a while. I think Curtis mentioned earlier that some of the racetracks are going to have an initiative where they're going to go on and work with under the auspices of TRPB and identify these horses and insert a microchip so that their identifiers and their security personnel will see a microchip in every horse. But for the most part, you're going to have some horses with written
Physical
papers and some with digital for a couple of
Right.
years.
What a mess. Okay.
Just to verify that I had a question. At this point in time, you can do one or the other, correct?
At this point
But
in
you
time,
don't have to tattoo, I guess is really.
at this point in time, we administer lip tattoos till the end of the year.
Okay,
At some point in this year, most likely at or before July 1st,
Right.
we will also turn on digital certification.
right. I think
Digital.
the question was really if they wanted to wait and do, in other words, they don't have to tattoo them right now. The question was, can they wait? Which my understanding was, yes, you can wait until after this date, which you're touching on maybe July.
That's true, and that will...
Assuming that they're not gonna race.
And it's not just July 1st, but it's also that we have the technician with the infrastructure in place. So there will be a number of places it'll be after July 1st.
Understood.
Yeah, just in terms of the waiting, I think if I was sitting in your seats, I'd wonder why are you all waiting? The development to get this done in computer systems is pretty dramatic. It takes a lot of resource to get it done. And this is all envisioned for effective January 1st, 2020 going forward. We're actually trying to accelerate that. And the Jockey Club has to develop a piece of it for us. We've done that collaboratively with them. And Encompass has to develop a piece. So you need to have the horse identifier have availability to get at this information. Otherwise, you have a horse identifier that has nothing. So it's not even as good as today. So in order for the programming to get done, that's the reason we're waiting to begin the digital tattoos and the use of digital tattoos.
Will there be an option going forward in the future, though, to take these horses that have the old paper and have a chip placed in them to have the digital tattoo, so you're not carrying a set of original papers and trying to do the digital papers as well? Will there be an option like that available in the future if you wanted to take your group of horses and have them all digitally tattooed, so you're not trying to pack around two sets of papers?
Yeah, and let's make a distinction between the digital tattoo and the digital full certificates. I mean, currently, there's physical full certificates up until the year of horses foaling in 2018. And starting in 2018, those horses only have digital papers. So you have physical papers for horses foaled before 2018. You have digital papers for horses foaled at 2018 and after. And those two worlds won't meet. There's copies, photocopies of physical papers in the database, but that doesn't mean that they're digital papers. So there's one set of primary papers, physical or digital. In terms of the digital tattoo, as soon as we start digitizing the tattoo, even if we receive, let's take, it's January 2020, and there's a 5-year-old who comes and is racing for the first time, that horse is making its first lifetime start. We will be giving that horse, assuming the identification vets out, we will be giving that horse a digital tattoo. That horse will have physical papers, but we'll be giving that horse a digital tattoo.
If you don't want to answer that one, I can. You okay?
Either way, I'm sure we're going to give the same answer.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, so
I just didn't want to put you on the spot since it's not quote unquote.
No,
your
that's really a Jockey Club question. But when you're giving your digital paper to the track, like right now you hand the track a paper. And when you're going to go to the next track, you go to the race center and you say, give me the paper, I'm going to the next track. What you'll do in the future is say to the racetrack, send my digital certificate to the next track, I'm going here. And they'll do that. So the control is always with the owner of the horse or his agent. Yeah, there's basically one agent or owner for that horse, and that's the person that's going to be allowed. So if you have a trainer, and you can authorize your trainer to do that at the racetrack for you.
And again, I do want to make sure that is a separate entity. But again, the process is I've gone through the class, so to speak. There's a master administrator of whoever owns the horse. But again, as I said earlier, once you land those papers at Indiana Grand, then you as the owner of the papers mark them as the administrator. So let's say the horse is claimed, they have the right to transfer those papers into the other. If there's a request to go ship it to Churchill, that administrator does that. So a real world example for me is we at Adena, we'd have to chase papers all over the country because they were handed to a trainer and then they didn't get picked up out of the racing secretary office when the horse shipped, when it's shipped back home. And so we're constantly trying to fight with those papers. But as the ultimate administrator now, you have the right and can get those papers. So that to me is a big plus from somebody who's chased papers all over the country.
Just,
So-
I know I'm sorry, we're almost out of time, but
Yeah.
one email address you should write down if you have any further questions for the digital tattoo is tattoo@trpb.com. Tattoo@trpb.com. And any questions that you send in, we'll turn around a response for you.
And one last thing that I just want to, I guess, reiterate for you, Curtis and Hank. Obviously, horsemen are notorious pessimists. So one of the things that a lot of us have talked about is making sure the TRPB has those backup pieces of equipment at the racetrack. Because a lot of us see this as, you're all of a sudden you're in the age where there's only digital tattoos, you're scanning, boom, third race, all the equipment dies. Where are we going to go with race 4? So I think that's one of the bigger fears from your aspect of, technology is great, but it also breaks down and can scare you like we had yesterday. So.
Yep. Curtis addressed that a little bit. At the racetrack, they're going to be able to pull up all the information and download it when entries are taken. So it's not just an online version. There'll also be that race is drawn a couple days out. All that information will reside on the local tablet or the local phone. It'll reside in multiple tablets, so that'll take care of it. I'll also say, I think the Jockey Club, remember, these digital certificates won't show up at racetracks until 2020, when these 2018s are 2-year-olds. So the Jockey Club's intention, I believe, this year is to have more communications about what's going to happen. A lot of the questions you may have, more than likely, will be answered pretty well through those communications.
Great, thank you, and hopefully things will work out. We'll get invited next year to do a finale on this with the introduction of the digital tattoos. Thank you very much for being attentive and all your questions.